Hey everybody, Josh here. How you doing? It's a lovely Sunday morning here in Australia. I was going to do a video follow-up from the Trump stuff. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things. So number one is why you don't jump to conclusions. So the evidence on the ground was not enough to suggest collusion or big conspiracies. And even still, with a lot of the evidence, it's all suggestive. It's all suggestive. It can be explained by human error or human incompetence. Sometimes these situations are just very, very complicated, interactions between individual events that don't have anything to do with each other. There needs to be more evidence to suggest collusion. The other thing I wanted to talk about, so to round that off, evidence might come out that there was collusion. But it is good practice not to jump to conclusions in the moment, to be like Sherlock Holmes and to fit facts with theories. Actually, it's the other way around. Fit the theory to the facts. What we do usually is the other way around, which is we fit the facts to our theory, which is backwards. The other thing is the prophecy apparently that was out. Now, the thing about prophecy is it's telling the people of God something that is intended to redirect them back to God. So the subject of this prophecy, I mean, there are personal prophecies, sure, like with Paul in Acts, where the guy gets his belt and ties himself up with it and says, this is what's going to happen to you, Paul. And notice what Paul does. He completely ignores the prophecy and goes anyway. So the prophecy about Donald Trump obviously couldn't help Donald Trump because he didn't know about it. Don't make something true. Similarities don't make two things the same. If I have two glass mold from the same set, they're very same. You could even say they're identical in the sense of what you can notice. But they're not the same. The same with prophecy. It's like, or religions or other things like that. Anything. Similarities don't make two things the same. So the prophecy about Donald Trump's assassination attempt said that his eardrum blew. That didn't happen. And you could say, well, that's the interpretation of the viewer. And it's like, yeah, but it's God's job to make something clear. If God wants his prophecy to be accepted, he needs to make it of a sufficient quality so that there's no question. You say, well, you just don't have faith. And it's like, well, that's the perfect argument, isn't it? Because it depends on my subjective fault. No. That prophecy is not anything. Because the environment around was people were talking about assassination attempts and all that other stuff. The environment around, notice how an American had the prophecy, and also it was about someone that was very recent that they all really loved, and there was voices around about, having him killed and other things like that, and, So in other words, all the information there was in culture. In the prophecy, God didn't say anything that no one thought. There was no need for the prophecy whatsoever. And here's the other thing about saying that God saved Donald Trump. A guy died. A guy with a family, a good guy, a wonderful man. Are you trying to tell me that God can make a miracle for Donald Trump, but he can't make a miracle for that guy? You kidding me? Here's in the movie Pulp Fiction, Jules and Vincent in the opening, the major scene, the opening story. Someone came out from cover that they didn't know was there and shot at them 12 times. And none of the bullets hit anybody. They went through all of them. And then Jules goes on and says that he thinks that's divine intervention. If the guy who was trying to assassinate Trump let off 6 shots, let's say 6 shots, that's all he could get off before he got neutralized, and none of those 6 shots hit anybody, that would be a miracle. That would be God's hand. The fact that you're saying, or that people are saying, that God saved Trump but didn't save that parent, that dad who was covering his kids, that is poor theology. Because what it does is, you don't know whether God saved him or not. It's just a fortunate event for you. Because if the bullet had landed, you wouldn't be saying, oh, this was God. You wouldn't be saying it. So doing it is really insensitive to the families of the victims and their kids. Because they're hearing everywhere that God saved Trump but didn't save their dad. That's ridiculous. It's insensitive, it's foolish, and it makes for great sound bites, but it's terrible theology. And it doesn't witness to the non-believers either. And I think that needs to stop. So yes, we can thank God that Donald Trump was not killed. But going so far as to say God supernaturally saved him is way out of your pay grade. And I think it's really unhelpful. Because what does that do? Oh, God has his hand on Donald Trump. Does that mean that everything Donald Trump does is sanctioned by God? Say like Samson thought, because God was on his hand, he can do this and he can do that, and the power really comes from him. He turned into a bad guy. So if everyone's going around saying, oh, God, Donald Trump is God's man, Donald Trump is God's man, it's like, what does that do? Number one, how much pressure does that put on him? Number two, what does that say about the things he does while in office? Are you saying that everything he's doing is from God? And what happens if he starts doing stuff that isn't from God? Do you backflip? A proverb, I can't remember the reference, but there's a proverb that says, do not proclaim something as holy and then afterwards recant or change your mind. Or a fool dedicates something as holy, but then later on changes his mind. Something along those lines. The idea is a fool jumps the gun and says that something is special and holy and from God. And then later on, they realize more information or it's inconvenient or whatever, and they change their mind. Don't do that. Don't allow the Republican Party to use God as a commercial advertisement for Donald Trump for Christians. It's not good. Need to be more responsible as Christians, more wise. Gosh. Don't know what's happening there. Someone must have eaten KFC. So do you get what I mean? It's like, I have no problems. I like, Donald Trump is great. I mean, if I was an American, and I'm not, but if I was an American and I had the right to vote in the American elections, I would probably vote for Kennedy. I like him. He's a good guy. But not to say that you shouldn't vote for Donald Trump. Not to say that you shouldn't like Donald Trump. Not to say that Donald Trump might not become a Christian or won't become a Christian. He might. But the thing is, the interpretation of the events of whether they're from God or not is it was Donald Trump's event. He has the authority to say whether he thinks it's from God or not. Not us. Not us. Because we don't know what God showed him. We don't know what God encouraged in his emotions or other things like that. I mean, anytime that I've heard a testimony of God saving someone's life, it's usually an internal witness to them to move or to do something, not something that's completely outside, like they never thought it. They never thought it. There's some sort of witness that they had before the event internally that no one else knew. But they did at the time, and then the thing happened. So that later on they knew that, well, I knew this was going to happen, and then it happened. It must be God. Donald Trump has not said that he thinks that. But everybody is they're gaslighting Donald Trump. They're pushing their belief. They're putting pressure on the media and on Donald Trump and on everybody to believe that Donald Trump is a God-appointed candidate. And I think that's really, really foolish. Not to say that Donald Trump is not a good guy, that you shouldn't vote for him. Not to say that he won't do good things for America. Not to say that he won't eventually become a Christian. But think carefully about what you're doing. This is way too premature, and I think ultimately unhelpful. Have a think about it. Tell me what you think. I mean, I've been really open and honest with what I think. You guys tell me what you think. I'd like to read. I'd like to know. I'd like to understand. Because, I'm not American. I'm not in that world where there's all that fervor and emotion. So let me know. Anyway, thanks. Have a good day. See you later.